Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review 28 Weeks Later. So, my main intrigue about this film was to have heard that it is going to get a sequel. Uh, Currently, I guess there is to be a 28 months later or 28 years later being put in production. So, I'm like, okay, like that could be interesting to see how that all plays out. And so also, I am to hear that there's going to be another Resident Evil film at some point coming out, whether that's going to be legit or not. But that is to, I guess, have tied into the prior Resident Evil movie franchise with Mila instead of the more rebooted current one, which I guess it's like, well, maybe they're going to just smash them together because that would make a lot of logical sense. But, anyways, 28 weeks later, we have a story that at certain moments of it is to be very savage. Choices at some point are to be made where you are to be shocked about, because quite a bit of this movie is to try to have some shock value with it, but then while also uh, give me certain moments where I am to groan about it and not in a good way. So we of course have certain not only audio but then visual things that this movie tries to do that I'm like, really? There are some like very quiet whispering dialogue moments, but then there is also like having to have these action punch up moments that are to be very loud. So you're like, dang it, man, like this sucks. Because the volume is not equal to one another, and then also it's to really just be the cheap scaring thing of sound, and I don't like that whatsoever. But then also we come across a film that really is to not be similar than its first movie, as in the first film we are to see a character who is to kind of just wake up from a coma-ish like thing and is to be running amok across an empty town to eventually find like-minded people like himself that go on decide to do stuff like shopping sprees and make their way into certain locations where zombies are to attack them and try and kill them, and eventually having them be tied to this militia by the end of that tale. And really, I saw all of that as a very natural progression of things, to where as this sequel, I feel, is to have a lot of natural, uh, realistic progressions to things. But then also, we really have a movie that is to have shots done at night vision shots. And I'm like, wow, you guys try everything humanly possible to make this movie further and further harder to see, harder to watch, uh, and so on and so forth. Like, similar to the Ryan Reynolds Buried film that becomes just tougher and tougher to watch because you're literally not seeing much of anything. Uh, but so much of this movie eventually becomes a race against time like film, and is to remind me quasi somewhat similarity to a number of other dystopian films like the David Bautista Bushwick movie or Escape from New York or LA. Like, really just try to dig deep to find in my brain any movie that is to be quasi similar, but is to probably not exactly be a zombie apocalypse film. But, anyways, really, I would honestly have to go on and state for this film that there is probably going to go on and be some clickbaiting things about it, where you would go on to see Jeremy Renner in this movie, Idris Elba in this film, and maybe you could just go on and state that there are good enough things about this movie, but like so much of the scale is to tip into a bad place to where really I am to just go on and have to be forced to thumbs down this film, sadly enough. To just say that, even to just say that it's a film that I think people would probably just go into it because it's a Jeremy Renner zombie apocalypse film, kind of like I had gone on to see Maggie because it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger zombie apocalypse movie. Even though when I would go into tune into that film, like really, I was like, man, this is such a slow paced thing. But hey, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting zombies. Good enough, forcibly, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, so this movie is unfortunately bad, but hey, I guess I just had a good enough time. I guess I was to have something to just want to talk about, and that is what this movie really ends up being. So, plus also with that said, like a lot of the story ends up going to be like, oh, like this is what they're trying to do with this tale, to have like another kind of zombie cure like story, and having to protect this cure as much as possible ends up becoming like, oh, this is just like The Last of Us. And so yeah, like so much about this ends up being so familiar with so many other things. So with that said, let's go on and let's double five this bad boy up, because I think it's really just time to just go into full on spoilers about this movie, and really just go into spoilers and bust the five spoiler timed out. This movie is available, I would assume, on Hulu, but I didn't really go through and check that out through there. I went on and I watched it through an app called Zeliphonic, Zelivonic. But then also, I was to notice that there's a possibility that you could see it on other apps like Manic, Mannic, as well as just other things that at some point you would probably need an APK download of on a Google search like HDO Box. But rationally, I would just say, hey, go out of your way to check out the other apps prior, because you can just watch it there. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go and to pause this, because it's spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie as the timed moment has come. So, all right. All right. So, at the very beginning of this tale, we would, of course, have this family that is going through their favorite meal. It seems that the Dawn character is to be having a moment with Alice, and Dawn is to, of course, ask his wife, like, oh, like, what are you cooking tonight? And it's like, oh, your favorite meal. It's like, well, thank God that we have just something to eat, because, like, we're gonna be having wine and chocolates, and we're just gonna celebrate that we're still alive here, because we're probably gonna be dead in a couple of minutes. So Dawn and Alice make their way into making dinner to gather around a table to then feast upon this meal, to be having a savage knocking upon this door, to realize that it is a child, a kid, a boy. And I'd be like, don't open up for that boy. This is a zombie apocalypse. Like, he could have like a bite upon his leg or his hand. I don't care if it's a kid. No, like, the world has ended. Shitteth had hitteth the fan. So, like, you can get sucked in that way. Like, all it takes is just one boy coming in your house, and then 5 people end up dead. And that's what happens here. That was your poor choosing of choice. But it always happens in a horror film. So, we have this kid coming in, and just savagely just tearing apart this bowl, and to have probably thought that this bowl was probably meant for one of the other girls, uh, guys that had not come back because he's probably dead. But this kid is just eating away at this bowl, having the tale of which that he is to have had his parents come for him. And so that is to have one of our characters make their way to this window, and is to be poking their eyes out to just kind of see if there's to be any zombies coming their way, which leads to a zombie like poking its eyes through this hole, smashing its way through this window, and going on to grab this person's arm, just bite right into it, and that forces to have the rest of the family just going on and being like, okay, what the heck was that? Making their way to this girl, start to realize that she is to being a zombie, and it's like, well, hey, like, this person is probably going to die. We should just go on and get the heck out of here. So we start to see the family separate within these locations, these rooms, realizing that they're probably like destined to die here. And so the further and further we see these zombies slip in, and these family members start to hide upon these barns or these rooms that they can hopefully close these doors to, we start to see these zombies coming in, and we are forced to now have our characters make hard choices. We would have Don, who is to be placed in a room with his wife and this kid, and he is to see that he could easily just close this door and get away from the zombie, and that's what he chooses. Wow, okay. But then not only that, like, he gets out of that place scot-free and is to just be running out of the house, and is to be looking back at his wife that is at this window just going like, oh! And he's just like, later, baby. Like, you're going to be the meal, and I'm going to just feel like really exhausted while I'm just running amok through finding out that there are a plethora of zombies that are going to be chasing after me because I am just some man-witch. And which also, like, Don, like, should feel horrible that he has just turned his back upon these people. But I guess it really just was, like, him or them, and he just made that horrible choice. So Don is booking it just like, oh man, like I think I can just run all day. Like, it's been so long. I'm having the sun hit my skin. Like, 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 this is just a wonderful day, even though the zombies are chasing me down. So Don makes his way onto this boat that was already occupied, seemingly by another man. And when Don is to jump his way onto this boat, that kind of gets this other guy to, like, just kind of flop out. And these zombies are rushing onto this boat. And Don ends up being the last sole survivor out of this whole situation that we are to assume, as he is to make his way onto this boat and just be like, tra-la-la-la-la, look at me, I survived. So I'm like, man, the way that this tale just twisted and turned was, I guess, just all the excitement that we can just be getting at the beginning here. So we then fast forward to this military containment area, green zoned patch of land, and we have these people coming from this subway or this North Rail or whatever it really is to actually be called here, and we have this military going on and speaking to all these people, letting them know that, like, yeah, this is the green zone, you're safe here, it's a military operation, like we are to have a number of snipers to assess a number of situations, as well as also having a helicopter just fly in and out. So we'd have both Tammy and Andy, very creative names, right? Who are to be diagnosed by Scarlet. And Scarlet is to notice that one of them have this unusual eye color, to be fairly similar to the poster here. So one is to be blue, one is to be brown. It's like, oh wow, like you have this very interesting eye color, and the son is to go on and say, it's like, well, yeah, like my mother is to have the same. So just gene wise, like, man, did I just hit the lottery? Which we'll find out he's to probably hit the lottery much better than we are to think the further into this tale. So we would have Scarlet, who is to be at this airport, and like bits and pieces of this, like immediately when I see a zombie apocalypse airport, I'm reminded of like Warm Bodies and also the John Cusack Cell film. And so Scarlet is to be very much scared that there is to be a child uh, in the mix of all of these people, but it's just the natural progression of like, well, yeah, like obviously, like we need to have like all different kinds of people here, like, and so we'd have Scarlet that is to bring up to uh Stone, who is Idris Elba here. It's like, well, hey, like we have a child here, like we're really, like I think we're really starting to make a lot of mistakes. And Stone is just like, well, like if it ever comes down to it, like that's why we have a lot of certain plans being put into place, and we have to, of course, call out the code red, which is not the exact same code red from the Few Good Gentlemen thing. Like, really, we're having to state, it's like, well, hey, we have every precaution known to man. Like, if it means to wipe out your fellow man, like, that's what we're going to have to do. So, both Tammy and Andy are to rejoin society, as well as also rejoin their father, who is to be the same dad that was to have been in prior story, who was Don. And so Don, it seems, is to have definitely some time pass between his tale and when he is to meet these family members. And Don, it seems, is to have some swing with this facility, where he is to be able to swipe a card and control a door from opening and closing, and is to eventually make his way into his apartment room, and is to have to go on and break the story to his kids about their mother dying, and how he was to have gone on and seen it himself, supposedly, and how he was forced to go on and just run for his life. Man, does this story get really good. So, the thing that I also love about a story is when certain decisions or certain mistakes or whatever are to come back and bite somebody in the tuchus, in the rumpus room, in the back end, in the hindquarters, and we get that here. So, we would come to find that Don is to tell his kids this tale of their mother dying and how he was to have witnessed it. Sure he did. Sure he did. And both Tammy and Andy decide upon their own selves, like, well, hey, like we should go on and we should get back to our old home because it's fairly nearby. And Andy is to want to go on and want a picture of his mother because he's starting to forget her. And so that forces the two of them to just be like, well, like, we just need to go back to our old home and pick up some things. So Tammy and Andy are to be now sneaking out, going across this bridge, and we are to have a sniper go on and notice these people slipping away and telling his helicopter operator, who ends up being Flynn here, who I, of course, know him from, which is somewhat similar to a zombie Ash-like story, but is kind of more of a mix of like kind of like The Fog and kind of like a monster story, but either way, it's fairly interesting for anybody to really check it out. So Doyle, who is to be Jeremy Renner, the sniper character, is to go on and be very much a person who's just kind of bored with the life that he's leading right now. He's like, really, this is a zombie apocalypse, man. We're just gonna have to just stand around here and just wait for something to happen, and we're gonna have to just go on and just bust the chops of everybody and like just stand around and just do something, like. And so we would have Tammy and Andy that are to make their way to this home, which lands them to be taking this photo, but then also is to have the son find his mother, because his mother had gone on to run off to their home also. We are to look at the mother, and her eye is fairly disfigured, as well as seemingly the rest of her body is kind of just a little changed. And we're assuming right out of the gate, she's a zombie. What's going on here? And so by the time that Flynn and the other military operation is to come back to retrieve these two puppies, we would come to find also that this woman is to have to go on and be retained also, and to be put into this facility where they are looking at her to be like, oh my god, like, this is a 1 in a million shot that we just somehow like are able to witness right now. And have Scarlett kind of look her over and are to take blood samples from her and start to realize, like, oh my god, like, this woman, like, is to have the infection inside her, but for some reason she is just like not having it. She's like Liam Neeson from the Taken films, that she will just not turn. And Scarlett then tells Idris Elba's character and all the military men, it's like, well, hey, like, we're seeing that this woman is a 1 in a million shot, and like, she's the one person that can turn the tide here. Like, this is a cure. So, and of course, all of that ends up getting effed up by, simply enough, having Don making his way through this facility. And if Don had not already gone on and spoken to his children, having them state that their mother is to seemingly still be alive, and of course he would be forced to see that to be the truth, as well as being shamed by his children to obviously state, it's like, you told her she was dead. And Don was like, well, Yeah, I guess I thought she was dead, but I was wrong. I left her for dead. That's what I meant? Left her for dead. Yeah. So, like, I guess Tammy is gonna go on and take back that comment about her dad. Like, man, I'm just so happy that you're just still alive. Cause really, you left our mother for dead, you mother. I liked my mother more, or whatever. Maybe that's how you're gonna play all of this. So Don goes on to notice that his wife is to be this thing called alive. So he goes on to lock lips with that woman, and immediately is to realize that I guess you don't know about zombies, because not only is there going to be a blood transformation or transfusion of that, but then also we have to realize that saliva is to come into a factor of infection. So we really have it to where Don is soaking up that saliva within his bate and becomes a zombie. So Don is just freaking it out. He is just rage quitting, and he quits on his wife so much so that he is just thumbing those eyes and just really going in deep to where blood is just coming out of him. And I'm like, dang, man. Some savagery going on there, but like he's full on zombified, so what could he do? So this guy is just really working on this woman horrifically so, and then is to decide like, well, yeah, just like being closed off in this one room just clearly isn't good enough. I'm going to go on and just make a meal out of other soldiers and create this huge massive breakout that'll force everybody to just run rampant and have a good time. So if Jeremy Renner had not gone on and consistently looked throughout the neighborhood and saw a couple doing it and saw like a family warm in their beds and a number of other things that are kind of being put in place within the scenery of life. Jeremy is to have also gone on and spoken to Flynn, who is starting to doze off in his helicopter, and we would have Doyle scare the crap out of him, and then go into the eventual madness, which is to be that our characters are going to have to shoot multiple people running rampant upon the streets. Because Scarlett is to take both Tammy and Andy with her amongst a plethora of other people needing to all go into one location. And Scarlett is to be forced to separate herself from the rampaging crowd that is to separate her from these kids while she's going on to talk to this military associate. So that leads the kids to be separated under this kind of very darkened, barely lit area, which that is where we start to see the zombie mix being placed within this crowd that starts to go on and chomp away at these people. And so these people, who of course are to be scared, are just kind of meanderously running around wherever is to be a safe location, is to have our snipers need to shoot them all down. Because we have Code Red, this outbreak is too great, and it is so far widespread now that like we just have to do just some kind of damage control, which forces all of our snipers to shoot down every single person that they can see. So we start to have Doyle, Jeremy Renner's character, who starts firing away and is to just eventually start to see this kid. And he realizes that like he cannot go on and take the life of this kid. But speaking of taking lives, the further and further Doyle is to start shooting here, he has to realize certain other snipers are being munched on as well. Tor Doyle is like, dude, I'm freaking out of here. Like, there is no place that is safe. So Doyle had gone on to also talk to Flynn, kind of being kind of told what is kind of going on through the journey of Doyle, kind of running around finding Scarlet and the kids, as well as whoever the kids were to go on and find also. And so they were all to start running together, and that leads Doyle to be running in a location where there is a sniper present, and we would have Scarlet, who ends up getting shot in the leg. Doyle ends up wanting one of the people to run in this kind of zigzag-like motion, for him to be able to have Doyle shoot down one of the sniper men. And so the guy does not want to go on and run off, but the kid does so. Andy does so. So Doyle ends up going like, okay, since he's now doing this, I'm going to shoot the guy down. And Flynn is now going on and is flying around telling now Doyle that it's like, well, hey, like, you have 4 minutes to get to a safe place, because they're going to bomb this place. And Doyle is like, okay, like, I got you. Like, I got to run with that chicken with my head cut off, and realize that we only have like a number of minutes. We gotta go. So this group, they run off into this kind of just underground location, and the bombs goes off, and so that forces our characters to just be safe for the time being. But there is to obviously be at a certain point where Doyle is to need to go with Scarlet and this family group to get to a point where Doyle can like rejoin this helicopter. You know, the problem with this helicopter is like it can only really just take one other person. So we'll get to that when it all plays out. So we have Doyle and the rest of this group, Scarlet and Tammy and Andy and so on and so forth. They all make it to this almost carnival-esque like location that is to have this, I believe, merry-go-round, and is to have these very much empty trailer-like things. So Doyle goes on and is to have this moment with Scarlet where he is to try and understand them a lot more, as well as Scarlet trying to understand Doyle a little bit more. So Scarlet goes on and asks Doyle, it's like, well, hey, like, why did you decide to, like, leave your post? And Doyle's like, well, hey, I saw this kid, and, like, that's all I cared about. Like, nothing else. Like, my orders went out the window. Like, I just saw that everything was going south, and that one kid was just my possible saving grace here to save my soul. So Doyle ends up asking Scarlet, it's like, well, hey, like, why did you tie yourself to these kids? And Scarlet is to say that with inside of them, there's a possibility that they can have the possible cure to all this, because maybe they had gotten a gene from their mother, and like, it could be a complete possibility that they might have the gene or skipped a generation. There's a number of possibilities here. So Doyle is like, all right, okay, cool. Like, it seems like we both get to know, like, or understand one another here, if we weren't all just kind of running for our lives before. as well as Scarlet needing to go on and put a bandage over her leg that is to, of course, be bleeding out. So we would have Flynn going over the radio to Doyle, stating that there is going to be zombies making their way to him. And Doyle's like, well, hey, like 60 minutes out? And he's like, no, 60 seconds out. So Doyle then makes his way to this part of grass, hoping that Flynn will eventually arrive to drop the helicopter down. So Doyle then is to spot these zombies starting to make their way slowly but surely to them. But then eventually the helicopter is to arrive, and Doyle is to be talking with Flynn because Flynn just thought, like, oh, I thought you were going to just be by yourself. Now you're with all of these people. Like, I can't take all of them with me. Like, no, like, I just wanted you to come. And so we see the mass struggle here. One of the people that are to go on and really just be a fodder character, sadly enough, is to eventually jump on to the helicopter, and the helicopter ends up swinging so wildly because of the weight of this man. Eventually, we come to find that the helicopter ends up blading through a bunch of these zombies, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like a really cool effect here. But then we turn around and realize that, like, okay, like, now we're left with this helicopter still, like, it's operational, and like it has gone on to like separate from the rest of the group here. So this now forces Doyle to eventually still need to separate from the environment that has gone on to be a zombie or just unsafe zone. So they make their way into this location to then notice this car and are like, well, okay, like, we need to go on and like, we need to start this car. Come to find out, by the time that they're trying to start this car won't start. Like, of course it is, because we have these militia men that are behind our car, and they are to have these flamethrowers. So not only did they have like zombies surrounding the car, but then after that, once the zombies start to leave, then these militia men with these flamethrowers arrive. So we have Doyle, Jeremy Renner, who gets in the back of this car and is to start to push it, hoping that the car will start that way. So Doyle continues to push this car, and the car is to seemingly start to get more momentum. And so by the time that Jeremy fully is to realize that this car is to start, he's to die in the process. Because the flamethrower military guy is to just see Renner as just another person who everyone just needs to be killed off anyways. So this is another guy that needs to get killed. So ergo, so does Doyle here. And it is the saddest thing. I'm like, no, Jeremy Renner, don't get killed off in this movie, and give such a heart crunching, just, ugh. But hey, he sadly had to go. So we have Scarlet and the kids making their way to this seemingly like tunnel like subway station, because they had gone on to take this car through this locale and had eventually further and further decided to go through this tunnel, which more and more had diddly squat worth of lighting in it. So forcing our characters to now have to have this night vision green lighted thing upon it, and force our characters to now go through this location, but trip and fall through the bodies of which, because they don't know really what they're stepping in, and just makes for a horrific scene. So we find the kids tripping and falling through these bodies off of this escalator, and what all really just Scarlet is to do here is to really just be a waste of time in my eyes. And Scarlet eventually is to find a zombie fully alive, awakened here, and is to bash the crap out of Scarlet with this weapon, killing her, and in turn, then is to have this be Dawn, who is to go after his own children. So we would have Dawn make his way to his youngest child, and with, of course, this child not being strong enough to really have the ability to fight back, but then also rationally, uh, I'm sure this kid has just realized that if he doesn't die here, he's going to die at some point. So this kid ends up being bitten by his own father, to then have him come to realize that like he turns, but like he is to have the cure like how his mother did. So Tammy is to go back to her brother to eventually hug him, and eventually go further into meeting up with Flynn, who is to be at this seemingly stadium looking location. So the two of them meet up. Flynn is to just be like, hey, like, I know that you were with that other group. Like, what are you doing here? Like, are you gonna try and kill me? What are you gonna try to do? So Tammy, of course, is to bargain with this guy to just be like, well, hey, man, like I just want to go home. Like, I just want to get out of here. Like, come on, like let's come to some kind of arrangement. Which then forces Flynn to just be like, well, okay, all right, like it seems like we can like have you guys just kind of ride with me and get the heck out of here. So they go into the helicopter, and we just have this kind of just 28 days later thing, and that just kind of wraps up this film with their assumptions of like these zombies are just wreaking havoc all over this town, and there's no real ties to the characters that we are to have seen in this film. We are just probably to rationalize that like chaos has more ensued. So that's the tale of this film. Sadly enough, to where we are to probably naturally assume that eventually when they do a sequel of this film, maybe they tie in certain actors that were in prior movies, or maybe not. I don't know. But either way, on to another review. So with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.